Today on the show, we have Michael Starr Hopkins, Senior Vice President of Firehouse Strategies and Democratic Strategist. Hopkins has worked in a number of capacities on presidential and statewide political campaigns across the country. Hopkins is a member of the New York Bar and currently resides in Washington, D.C. Michael, thank you. Welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
I wish we were talking under better circumstances, but I got to get right into this. Obviously, you are well aware of the killing, the murder of Daunte Wright. Immediately after this happened, the police chief of this town decided to do a press conference and became a de facto defense attorney, spinning a narrative of an accidental shooting. I just want to know your thoughts on this, and we'll unpack it together.
So here's my issue with it. At the end of the day, whether it's Dylan Roof, whether it's the shooter at the Aurora movie theater, at every instance, white criminals end up going in front of a jury, having their due process and having their day in court. But when African Americans are pulled over, whether it be a lawful stop or an unlawful stop, we somehow end up having the trial and the execution in the streets of America. And that's a problem because there is no accountability. You can't have the people who are being policed afraid of the police, and you can't have the people who are supposed to be protecting those communities afraid of the communities. So we've got to figure out something, because whether it be, Philando Castile, whether it be George Floyd, there's no excuse. People are being deprived of their humanity, their life, and families are being ruined.
Let's talk about this Brooklyn Center Police Department and this former officer now, Officer Potter. She has now resigned. We learned some things in the process of dissecting this story and investigating this story. She's a 26-year veteran of that police department. She's also the president of the local police union. She was involved in a killing in 2019 where a lot of reports came out that she was engaged in a cover-up at that point. But here's the thing, man, and Michael, you gotta find this ironic. It seems to me that cops need to treat unarmed black men like they treat white people who are serial killers or commit mass murder, right? Because they do get a day in court.
Yeah, I mean, not only do they get a day in court, but if you look at Dylan Roof, he got Wendy's, like he got food.
Well, let me correct you on that, sir. I think it was Burger King.
There we go. So, right. At the end of the day, Dylan Roof got treated like, an American, got due process after slaughtering African Americans in a place of worship. We're not seeing African Americans treated the same way. They're not getting the benefit of the doubt. And so, all this talk about Blue Lives Matter, all the talk about, we've got to support the police. We saw a video the other day of an African American man in fatigues, someone who served our country. That individual who, people on the right have said, we've got to support our military, got to support the troops. Kaepernick's this awful person because he knelt. Well, now where's his benefit of the doubt? Where is, this NRA defense of people like Philando Castile? Where is this defense of our troops now? It always seems like there's an excuse when the person who pulls the trigger is white. Well, now how do you justify that? And I think what we're seeing across the country is small steps being taken, but we're not seeing the broad changes that not only do we need, but I think Americans deserve.
Let me ask you about this, because I'm looking at this, I'm not an attorney, you are. Immediately, the narrative of accidental shooting, accidental killing came out about Officer Potter. This cop has now resigned, the police chief has resigned, the city manager has been fired. But do you think that there's a criminal element here, maybe negligent homicide? Is there any way that there's a criminal charge associated with what this cop did by taking this young man's life?
I think there's certainly reason to believe that there should be an indictment and that it should go in front of a jury. This person, when you're a police officer, there are expectations. You're given training. You're given, the right to actually inflict harm on someone. There are certain expectations. And so when you 26 years into the job say that you couldn't tell the difference between a taser and a gun, that's a problem. That shows that what we're doing is wrong. It's not a training issue. It's not a bad apple issue. The roots themselves are rotting. And so we've got to figure out a way to address not just the inequalities within our judicial system, but the economic inequalities that we're seeing that are leading to these stops, leading to this poverty, leading to this centralized situation where you have people who aren't living in communities that they're policing coming in and strongholding these communities.
Call me a cynic, man, and I hate to be the guy to say this, but when I heard the story of accidental discharge, that the cop thought she was grabbing her taser, but was grabbing her gun, I didn't believe it. And I don't even know if I believe it today, right? When you look at the variables here, you have a trained officer who's taser certified. That means that they are trained with the taser, to use the taser, and they're recertified every single year to use a taser. The taser is plastic. Her handgun is made of steel. The taser is yellow. Her gun is black. The taser has a different trigger mechanism than her handgun. The taser is located on the other side of her body than where her handgun is located. You gotta be freaking kidding me. And she had her hand on this gun for an extended period of time. This was not a split second. She held it, and then fired, okay? Am I wrong for being cynical about this whole, if you yell taser and kill someone as a cop, you get away with murder? I'm cynical about that policy. I think it's a bad message, and I think she needs to be indicted. What do you say to that?
Look, I understand you being cynical. I think we're all cynical at this point. I'm a gun owner. I've shot a handgun. I've shot tasers. You know the difference. A handgun is heavier. Like you said, the taser itself, it's a different color. It's lighter. If you're on the force, if you have that special training, you should know the difference. You should be able to tell the difference. If you can't, if the situation is at a point where you don't know where your faculties are, that's a problem. I think at the root of it, we've got to ask ourselves, why are police walking into scenarios where African-American men are viewed as a threat, a dire threat? Because we're not seeing police officers interact with white Americans the same way. They don't have the same fear. I went to college in Florida. The amount of interactions with law enforcement that I saw between white college students who were drunk, who were belligerent, who were aggressive with cops, and the reaction was very different. With those individuals, cops were very much de-escalating the situation. But when African Americans are involved with altercations with law enforcement, there always seems to be an escalation. Walter Scott running away from law enforcement. They shot. Philando Castile saying he had a gun and was a rightful gun owner was still shot. At a certain point, how do you ask for the benefit of the doubt?
Yeah, well said. Let me shift gears. We only have a few minutes, but we got to talk about what happened in Knoxville. Very sad. One fatality, obviously a student who's dead. Cop is injured. Another school shooting. And here's what's ironic. And this is my prediction because Republicans do it every single time. They will legislate on lies. All of these voter restriction bills, all of these, Republicans saying they got to change the law, all based on a lie. Based on lies. The fact that we have people still killing kids or kids taking guns to school, that's truth. That's really happening. Will there be legislation to address the violence in our school systems? I want you to answer that.
Look, I wish there was. I gotta say, it breaks my heart. I get very emotional when we talk about the violence that is happening in our schools. I realized after the shooting in Connecticut, when children were slaughtered and there was no real legislation put in place, that nothing was gonna change. And I am a gun owner. I think that every American should have the right to own a gun, but like the Constitution says, with limitations. And when people aren't safe in schools, when they're not safe in movie theaters, when they're not safe in grocery stores, we have to ask ourselves what kind of country we're living in. Because when these things happen overseas, we say that it's a destabilized government, it's a third world country. Well, in America, in this country, a country that we say is the greatest country in the world, people are getting killed at bus stops, at grocery stores, at movie theaters, at churches, at schools, all the places where they're supposed to be safe. We can't be a great country until we deal with our shortcomings. And right now, we have decided as a country that we're not gonna deal with those because it's an uncomfortable and difficult conversation. We have to be better.
Very well said, Michael. I appreciate your time today, man. Thank you for joining us on the conversation.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Stay safe.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.